Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Matthew Saunders. I am a composer and orchestra conductor, and this video is about writing musical variations. We will talk about why you might want to write variations, types of variations that you might want to consider as you're writing them, and the some tips to help you. The group that this is kind of initially aimed at is people working on the Community Variations project with the Lakeland Civic Orchestra. But I think there's going to be a lot in here that is generally applicable to composers who are starting out and who have some ideas that they might want to think about. So stick around and let me know. So what do we mean by variations, right? Once you've written a little piece of music, you sort of have three options, right? The first option is to repeat the same bit of music that you've already done, right? And that can get old pretty quickly, right? Nobody wants to hear the same thing over and over again. The second option is to come up with a completely different section, right? And if you're writing a pop song and you've written a verse, then it's time to write the chorus or the bridge or something along those lines, right? So do the same thing, do something different. The variation is somewhere in the middle, right? To do a little bit different version of something you've already done, right? And this is very rewarding musically. It's very rewarding from a creative standpoint, right? So one of the challenges that many composers face is what to do with the blank page, not just composers, but sort of artists generally. And if you can narrow down some of your options and narrow down some of your goals and the ways that you're going to work, right? And not have this entire palette of choices to choose from, but a few specific tools, then you can be more successful and you can create works that are more cohesive in some way. Right. So this is a great way to learn to compose, right? A lot of people feel like, oh, I have trouble coming up with a good melody. Variations take some of the pressure off that. Some people feel like, form is a problem for me, and getting to large scale forms is difficult. Variations can help with that because we're generally thinking in terms of building blocks rather than the overarching large form that so many of us love. This has worked so very frequently when I teach composition. I give my students the assignment to write variations, to choose a theme of some kind and to write variations on it. And it works for them. It helps them get to a place where they can complete a short to medium scale kind of piece and then build those shorter pieces into a longer piece. This is really what composition is sort of all about. It's a bit like playing with Legos. And it has not only worked for students in the 21st century, it works and worked for many of the great composers. So Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms and so many others, Vivaldi and Corelli, all writing variations. And some of these have come to be considered great works of art. Some of them are didactic, practical kinds of exercises that were used to learn. And so there's a long tradition going back centuries of writing variations. To both become a good composer and to be able to show off your compositional skills, right? Variations are a bridge from improvisation to composition, right? And one way to approach writing variations is to sit down at your instrument, whether it's piano, violin, flute, and guitar, and learn to play the theme, and then learn to play your own variation on that theme. Right? Learn a way to sort of improvise your version of the theme. And that's exactly what writing variations is. And then it's a matter of getting it written down, maybe so somebody else can play it, or maybe you're satisfied with that and you're good to go. All right. So I want to talk about types of variations. And in the Community Variations project for the Lakeland Civic Orchestra that we're working on, we have a theme chosen. And I've got that theme up here in Sibelius so that we can sort of play around with it and listen to it. And what I've done is we have let me switch over to another view here. We've got the melody line right here. This is the first two phrases of the alma mater of Lakeland Community College, right? We've got the melody line, and then I've got a 4-part soprano, alto, tenor, bass harmonization, the same one that we use when we perform it at Lakeland that we'll be using from time to time this year during the 60th anniversary, which is the impetus for writing these variations. And I'm just going to play it for those who are unfamiliar with it, right? Here is the first two phrases of Lakeland Community College's alma mater. Right. Very nice. Let's hear it again. Now, let's suppose we're ready to take on the next phase and write a variation for it, and write something that is a little more complex, that is a little bit more our own, right? And I'm going to look at this melody and I'm going to think about what the possibilities are. And one of the first things I might like to do is notice that it is almost all quarter notes. I do have a dotted quarter eighth combination, and I've got a longer note over here, and I've got a repeated little eighth note here. Maybe I want to make it fancier. One way to do that is by changing up the rhythm, right? And so if I leave harmony the same, if I leave a lot of the melodic ideas more or less the same, but I give it a fancier rhythm, right? Let's say that I want it to be all eighth notes and let it be a running kind of counterpoint on that. That's a very typical approach to variation. And this is a technique that we call diminution, right? Because I'm diminishing the basic note value. I'm going from quarter notes to eighth notes, right? And I might come up with something like this, right? Here is my variation in diminution. You can see that I've made pretty consistently eighth notes all the way through. And if you can compare it to my original melody down here in the soprano voice, right? These notes going up in the with up stems in the treble clef, you can see that I'm hitting a lot of the points, right? Here's E flat, which is the first note, and it's right there in the melody. G is landing there. A flat is right there, right? B flat, and I play with that a little bit. I have a descending line right here. I have a descending line in my variation. You can see what the possibilities are, and so somebody listening hopefully will recognize that, all right, this is a version of the same melody from Lakeland's alma mater. Now, when I hit the playback here, I have taken out, I've muted the notes in the soprano part so that they're not competing with each other in my variation melody. And I'll let you give it a listen. Here is a diminution, a rhythmic variation, right? Okay, and again. And if you've got a little more music theory background, you can see I'm doing things like passing tones and neighbor tones and arpeggiation to get to a different register going on. There's a lot of sort of the filling in types of things that can happen. So that's diminution, right? The next approach to a variation that I might take is what I call a figural variation, right? That I come up with some melodic or rhythmic figure that I'm going to repeat, that I'm going to make the basis for what's going on. And so in a sample that I've created here, this variation I'm making using arpeggiation. I've taken the basic chords that are in my chorale, that are in my tune, and I've turned those chords into arpeggios. We could do some interesting analysis, and we could say that, well, if I went on the first eighth note of each group of four, I've got a playable sort of melody. It's kind of not a particularly exciting one. If I looked at the second note, right, there's a playable melody there, and the third note, and so on and so forth. And I'm sort of I've got this pattern right here of a dissonant note on the first note of each group of four that resolves down to a consonant note. And I do that a couple of times. Here it is again over on this side. Give it a listen and see what you think. This is a figural variation, and I've worked out a figuration that involves arpeggiation. Okay, and that would be nice in the middle of a set of variations. Be careful with a figure like this right? This is not going to be practical for every voice or every instrument. And you certainly want to consider the instrument. And if you know the instrument well, you can think about, well, does it lie well for that instrument? If your instrument is piano, right? Can I get my fingers into the right place? And whether it's being played in left hand or right hand might make a difference, right? On the violin, how can I consider this? Or are there things I need to do, if I'm writing an orchestral variation like we are for the community variations? Are there things I'm going to be able to do to make this playable by the instruments that I have in mind for it? Maybe there is some dovetailing that can happen. One group plays the first three notes, and a second group takes over for the third note, the fourth note, and then somehow connects to the next group of four. This is an approach that can be effective and helpful, right? So that's arpeggiation, right? The next approach you might take is something that was very common during the Renaissance and during the Baroque era of composition. We call that variations on a ground, right? In a ground variation, the only thing that we really keep is the bass line, right? And the bass line is consistent and repeated. If you know Henry Purcell's aria from Dido and Aeneas, right, which is When I Am Laid in Earth, right? It's at the very end of the opera almost, this classic aria, right? And one of the things that makes it so effective is that Purcell is writing variations on a ground. He's got this extremely effective, evocative, emotional melody for Dido to sing, but this bass line is this continuously sort of falling, lachrymose kind of sorrowful melody. Just a wonderful, if you don't know the piece, look it up, right? Another example would be Gustav Holst, Chaconne from the first suite for band, if you know this piece, or Bach's Passacaglia in C minor for organ, which has been arranged for any number of ensembles, right? This is variations on a ground, and this idea that we keep the bass line the same and we write a new melody over it, right? So my ground variation here that I've written, right? I have a new melody for it, and I decided an important tip, an important trick as you write your variation: don't feel like you have to write every rhythm that you know, right? Give your variation cohesion, right, by repeating the same rhythm a lot. So you see I've got really 4 measures of music, and I use the same rhythm 3 times. And not only that, coming off of my long note, 2 of those times I have the same idea of coming down away from that note. And that's going to give me some cohesion. And if I really thought about it, I could probably find a way to make this one a down 2, but then that might get too repetitive and too monotonous. So knowing when to break a pattern is just as important as in knowing how to use a pattern sometimes. Right? So here is my ground variation. Okay, and again, and this time in the playback, in the piano part, I have muted all of the notes except the bass line because I don't want to necessarily get in the way. There's an opportunity to sort of reharmonize those notes. Here it is again. Okay, so that is the ground variation, keeping the bass line the same, writing a brand new melody, and even kind of letting the harmonies be determined by just your bass line and your melody as well, right? Now, a melodic variation, right? Here is a way that I can kind of compose a brand new melody. I can use the chord tones that I already have, the chord progressions that I have, the phrase structures that I already have, and I can sort of combine my ideas. And remember, we said you don't necessarily want to use every rhythm that you know in the same variation, right? And so I've got a couple of ideas. I've got this 1 and a 2. In this case, it's 3 and a 4, 3 and a 4. 4 and a 1, 4 and a 1, 4 and a 1, 2 and a 3, 4 and a 1, right? And then I've got this idea of 2 slurred notes, 1 and 2, right? 2 eighth notes and a half note, right? And so I've got, kind of limiting my ideas. Beethoven or Mozart, right? We would look at a piece by Beethoven or Mozart that is structured like this, and we would say, oh yeah, we call that a sentence, right? Because it does something, it does the same thing in a slightly different way, and then it tears apart what it's done already and comes to kind of a reasonable conclusion, a good cadence, right? So hopefully I'm not getting too far with all of the music theory terminology in here. If there's terms that you don't understand, certainly reach out and ask me about them. But here is my melodic variation. Now, I put a little exclamation mark here to remind myself, right, that in this measure, I have D here in the alto part. This is a B flat major chord with a G that resolves down to an F. The G is the non-chord tone. The D belongs in the chord. But up here, I have E flat against it, which could sound like a wrong note. And as you are composing, right, you have to make these kinds of decisions. If I were finishing out this variation, I might say, well, am I going to turn this into a E flat chord over B flat and have this be a purely consonant note, or am I comfortable with this dissonance between D and E flat? Every composer has to come to terms with their use of dissonance. This is something the 20th century has now told us we do, right? That there are fewer sorts of restrictions on how we write dissonances. And so, whether or not I think that note fits, right? The old saw from Peter Schickele is, if it sounds good, it is good, right? Peter Schickele ought to know he was PDQ Bach. So consider those things as you are writing. Do you want it to be dissonant? If it sounds like a wrong note, then you need to change it. If you can hear it several times and you realize that, oh, I like that note, that's what I meant, right? Leave it in. That's a good thing. That's part of your personal style and your personal approach. So that is sort of a melodic variation. It's melodic and it's rhythmic, and it's taking ideas from my ground variation and some of my figuration. You could imagine a variation that's nothing but, say, this 4 and a 4 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. That would be a possibility. That'd be sort of a figural idea. Lots of sort of things that can happen in these, right? Now we're going to get a little bit more advanced and a little bit more fun in a lot of ways, right? Let's say that I want to keep the melody of my variation the same. And you see, I've got the original melody up here, but I'm going to mess with harmony, right? I'm going to play with the expectations of what those chords are. I'm going to take my theme that is a very traditional tonal sounding theme, and I'm going to play around with it. And lots of composers in the 20th century do this kind of thing. I think of the American composer William Schumann, and if you know his New England Triptych, there's a lot of that in here, taking old themes and reharmonizing them. Or Aaron Copland frequently does this. Or there's a wonderful band piece by Mark Camphouse called Watchmen Tell Us of the Night. And in the middle of it, there is this very still, very beautiful reharmonization of that hymn tune that really kind of is the emotional core of that piece. So it can be a very powerful approach, reharmonizing. Or it can simply mean kind of taking, when we have chords in a tonal sense, there are often choices. We could do a 2 chord or a 4 chord if you're comfortable with that Roman numeral notation. And so reharmonization can be as simple as that, or adding in a dominant chord to intensify the motion to the next chord. Sure, go for it, right? Here's my reharmonization. I, as a composer, I'm a wind person, and some people say that wind people, because we're always adding tubes, are predisposed to flats. I don't know about that. I know that I like the flat side of the spectrum of the diatonic scale, right? So my Dorian mode, my Phrygian mode, my Aeolian mode, my Locrian mode even, and really kind of experimenting with that more than maybe I prefer the other side, the sharp side of the scale. And that's just what I like. So you can see that I've got a lot of flats. I've got D flat, I've got C flat, I've got another D flat, and on the end, instead of a B flat major chord, right, I have a B flat minor chord. at the very end. So now the changes are all going to be down here in my piano part, and I'm going to keep the melody the same. So it's all about deciding, what am I going to keep the same? What's going to be different? Here it is. See what you think. So a little more dissonant, right? A little more something that's going to catch your ear and make you sort of sit up and pay attention. It's not just sort of the plain hymn style that we sort of expect, that we respect too, but we expect it. Now, here's another shot of my reharmonization variation. Right? And notice that I've sort of kept the structure of this tune. I still feel, that there's one part of it that's here and one part of it that's here. Some of that is baked into this melody, right? Starting on the tonic pitch and moving to the tonic pitch here, and then starting on the tonic pitch again, and then closing on the dominant chord, even if it's a minor dominant in my case. Right? So again, if my theory knowledge, if my vocabulary is a little bit confusing, take what you can from it or ask questions, right? That's all important that's out there. Then, right, maybe you are comfortable in a style. Maybe there's a style you particularly like, a style that you would like to sort of emulate or pay homage in some way, right? And we see this, Beethoven will do this kind of thing where all of a sudden he comes up with a variation that is in a style of an opera from a Mozart aria. He does this in the Diabelli variations. And in fact, takes the theme of that variation and reworks it in a very specific way to sound like not just any aria, but a specific aria from Mozart's Don Giovanni. Right? In this case, I've decided to take the first part of our little melody here and do a style copy of a Franz Schubert art song, right? Because I was working in voice and piano, and that just sort of made sense. It's one that I sort of keep in the back of my head. Anyway, I don't know how well I'm necessarily doing at it, but with some work, I could probably get it to be a fairly decent facsimile. See what you think about this, right? Right? I don't know that I think Schubert would have done a better job of it, of course, at being Schubert, because that's who he was. But this is sort of the idea. It's getting the basics at least, right? A romantic style right-hand part with a bass line that is, I think, more typical of the romantic approach, the intensified dominant chord that's here, dominant function chord that's here, is an important aspect, I think. And then, of course, that wonderful Schubert idea that an art song is a collaboration between the pianist and the singer. It's that it's more than just sort of mere accompaniment on the part of the pianist. Here it is again, my Schubert homage, a little bit in 4 measures. Right? And this is especially useful if you are well versed in a particular style. If there's a style that you are passionate about, if you want to do a version that is bluegrass or Dixieland or pays homage to some kind of world music, that you can bring in some way, or a composer who you love, Debussy or Sibelius or Joan Tower, or any of those sort of possibilities, right? That's a stylistic kind of approach, and that call out, right? That recognition that people get of reworking the original theme in the way that your favorite composer or musician might have heard it or done it, right? There's a long-standing tradition of that. And then this idea of recomposing completely, and I have gone back to I did not do a recomposition variation, but if you take ideas from sort of a lot of these things, you can come up with something that if I didn't tell you it was a variation on the original theme, you might not know. right? Because it's so radically changed, because you're doing so many of these different things, you're changing so many elements, and yet there will be a little kernel that once I tell you it's a variation, you're like, yes, I hear it. I know that, right? Brahms is fantastically good at this in his Haydn variations, or his variations on a theme by Corelli, or his variations on a theme by Paganini, of turning it into something different. Or if you know Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, he takes this theme from Paganini's Caprice, number 24 for solo violin, right? And he turns it into this entire piano concerto, right? And gets to some variations that are so completely different that if you didn't know they came from Paganini's original melody, you would never guess. I'm thinking of like the 18th variation, that is the theme from the movie Somewhere in Time, right? Da 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 dee dum, da 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 dum, and to the really educated ear, or to the person who's been through 17 variations up until now, right? We know that this is related to Paganini's variation, even if we can't quite put our finger on it yet. But it belongs. It's together. That's recomposition. That might be the most adventurous kind of approach to take to these variations. Whatever you do will be fantastic. I know it. And if this is the first time you've ever written something like this, that's great. If you have a ton of additional experience, that is also just fantastic. I am going to stop sharing Sibelius, and I'm going to give you a few tips on writing variations, things that have stood me in good stead from there on. So give me just a moment here. Yeah, okay, you can see me. Good. So tip number one, right? Tip number one for writing variations: study your theme, right? Take a good look at it, learn to play it on whatever instrument you play, or to sing it, make it your own, understand where it's going, think about what the problems might be. There is no perfect theme for variations. There are some that lend themselves to variation better than others. You may not end up using your entire theme. If you're recomposing, right, you may choose just a little quirky section of it. Beethoven's Diabelli variations is a wonderful example. This is a set of variations for solo piano. Anton Diabelli was Beethoven's publisher. He knew a bunch of famous, mostly German and Austrian composers, and he asked them each to write one variation on this little waltz that he composed. Beethoven wrote his variation. He duly submitted it, but he couldn't get this little waltz out of his head. And he recognized that it wasn't a very good piece by itself, that it had these little quirks, that it had these things that he didn't quite approve of. And so Beethoven ended up writing who knows how many variations, but he published 32 of them. And in all different kinds of approaches: rhythmic, textural, melodic, harmonic, recomposition, stylistic variations. They're all there in the Diabelli variations. It's a great piece to study. And a lot of them sort of take one little quirk out of Diabelli's waltz that he starts with, and sort of pick it apart. It's almost like he's making fun of it and saying, well, I can do more with this than you can, right? Decide in your variation on what you are keeping. This is number 2. Decide on what you're keeping and what you're changing. Don't try to change everything necessarily. Maybe you like the harmonic progression that's there. Maybe that's one of the appeals of the famous Paganini 24th Caprice, right? Is that it's got this wonderful sequential moment, and composers love to write sequences. They're so fun, right? And so when you get to write a variation that includes a sequence, it's a great fun. It's great times. Decide what you're going to change. I'm going to change the rhythm. I'm going to change the texture. I'm going to change the stylistic approach. All of those are fair game. But decide what you're keeping and decide what needs to go. Write more variations than you think you will use, right? That's number 3. Write more variations than you think you will use. And so I don't know. I mentioned Beethoven publishing 32 variations on Diabelli's theme. I have no idea how many went by the wayside. This piece that I discovered not long ago, see if I can not be blurry. It's the Rising Sun variations by Bruce Wolosoff. Bruce Wolosoff, not a composer who is eminently familiar, but it's wonderful. It's a set of piano variations, about 40 minutes long, on the theme House of the Rising Sun, right? Classic tune. And so if you love rock music or blues, it's a great set of variations to listen to. And he says right on the cover that he wrote many, many more variations that he didn't include in the final set, right? And why? Because you will then figure out, which ones are really working, which ones aren't, right? For the Community Variations Project, everybody's submitting one variation, but that may not be the only variation you write. And you might start or draft several and then pick your favorite, right? Number four, don't feel like you have to do everything, right? Again, this is limiting. So, you don't need a variation that is at the same time rhythmic and textural and ground and melodic and harmonic and stylistic and a complete recomposition. Although if you did all those things, we are talking about a complete recomposition, aren't we? You don't need to do everything. You don't need to have your variation be a stylistic homage to Dixieland jazz and also at the same time reharmonize the tune in a 12-tone style, and at the same time, have a completely new melody that's going along with it, right? Make the variation recognizable. You want the audience member and the musicians who play it, musicians are your first audience, you want the musicians and the audience to say, oh, okay, I see how this fits. I see what you're doing there. You don't want to be painfully obvious necessarily. It is part of the game. Sometimes, intense sets of variations that feature a lot of recomposition are fun to try to figure out. It becomes a game between the composer and the listener. I'm thinking of Elgar's Enigma variations for orchestra, which are not just variations on a theme. Each one is a little thumbnail sketch of one of Elgar's friends or family members. Right? And then lastly, number 5, when you're writing a set of variations, you need to consider the overall flow and structure of the larger piece. This is why you might write more variations than you think you use, right? Because you can slot them in to where they go. A great example is Mozart's variations on a tune he knew as Vous de Maman. That's the French. Badly butchered. I'm not a good French speaker. We know the tune as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or the Alphabet Song. And Mozart does a wonderful job. He kicks off with a couple of arpeggiated textural kinds of variations. He gives us a couple of diminution variations. He gives us some that are completely new melodic. He reharmonizes and gives us a couple of minor key variations for this major key theme. He gives us some things that are probably stylistic in nature, and then he gives us a big finale. And it feels like you've heard an entire little piano sonata by the time he's done, because he takes us on this journey. It's a wonderful set to kind of take a look at. Another amazing set of variations from the 20th century is American composer Frederick Rzewski took a theme called "The People United Will Never Be Defeated," which is a protest song that he heard in its Spanish version in South America, and it just stuck with him. It's another one of these that has a great sequence inside the melody. It's a really catchy tune, and he wrote a set of variations that has this incredible internal structure to it, and he's very clear about, excuse the coughing, I've talked for a long time now, he's very clear about what elements he's changing in each group of variation and the control over it, and each set of 6 variations, I believe there are 36 in total, right? They pull apart the theme in a different way and focusing on a different element, and it's amazing. If you can hear it live, do it. But it's good on the recording as well. So that's a longish introduction to variations and what some of the possibilities are, what some of the things are you might be thinking about as you write them. I wish you the best of luck on all of your musical endeavors and in developing this composition. Specifically, if you're working on the Lakeland Variations Project, Community Variations, I look forward to seeing what you come up with and to helping you through as needed. And we've got not just a community that we're playing for, that we're writing for, we've got a community of composers who are helping to do this. So I will look forward to hearing all of those specifically from you all. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.